I got a shower, you guys. It was amazing. When you have small children, there are two things that are just amazing in life. It's a shower, like an entire shower, an uninterrupted shower, and a cup of hot coffee. Oh, life is good. I wanted to talk about this because somebody else brought it up to me. Now, a few people have brought it up to me at this point. Their belief that I don't have ADHD, I instead have autism. And I always find that really interesting, and I always try to kind of take that rather seriously because our understanding of both ADHD and autism has been evolving, and so there's this constant flow of new information, and when there's new information I get very excited. So I'm always happy to revisit that topic and kind of do another deep dive in it and kind of study it, but I have never really seriously thought I had autism. The more I research it, and I try to approach it with an open mind, the more I research it, the more I just find myself kind of running into this wall, like this is some people, this is not me. Very quickly before I get too started up with that, say hi to Skunk, he's here. Hey, kitty. Oh. At some point in this video, I can almost guarantee that he's so mellow too, that he is going to bump up against the camera and like destroy some of the audio. So I'm just anticipating that, but at the moment he's purring. I took notes on this because I was reading up on it and I had a lot of different thoughts, and so I'm going to be reading from my notes a little bit, but I wanted to talk about this because it's something that does come up. Like, I had one person just bring it up like a couple weeks ago, and yeah, it's interesting, so I'm going to talk about it.
Would you like to read a science fiction novel about a jungle planet rich with environmental dangers and curious aliens? I wrote a book. It is available on Amazon through Kindle, Kindle Unlimited, and also paperback copies. Thank you to everyone who has purchased a copy so far, and an extra special thanks to everyone who has posted a review. It really helps me out, guys.
So people ask very frequently why I think I have ADHD or what makes me think I have ADHD because given some of the subjects I talk about, I have a lot of people who are like, you just want to be special. You're just talking about this because you want to be special. You just want to be identified as special. You just feel like you need to be special because your life is boring or whatever the hell. Like, dude, my life is not boring. I refuse to live a boring life, and it shows in so many ways. But anyway, I got diagnosed with ADHD when I was about, I think, 10 years old, if I remember correctly. At the time, I was told it was ADD, attention deficit disorder, because they hadn't really lumped that in with ADHD. And to this day, I still can't get over the fact I got into a huge argument with my father at one point because I told him that I was told at the time that I got diagnosed that it was ADD and not ADHD. And he was like, oh no, it's ADHD. I was like, I know that, but at the time, that's what I was told. And they were like, oh, no, it's always ADHD. I was like, I understand. But at the time that I was diagnosed, what I was told was that it was ADD. Like, it matters. It's semantics. It's unimportant. But you know, these are the kinds of things I argue with my dad about. So, by the way, why would I be talking with my dad about it? Because he's a clinical psychologist, or was. He retired now, but was a clinical psychologist. Was very familiar with a lot of these concepts, and so every once in a while I go and pick his brain if I have questions. A lot of the things I talk about are pretty surface level because I'm a layperson. I'm not a psychologist. But it's good to get clarification from an expert sometimes. I have a lot of people who are like, stay in your own lane, you're just a stripper. It's like, I'm talking about what I know because it's what I know, because this is what I grew up around, so I don't know. Anyway, ADHD. I'm far more familiar with ADHD than I am with autism because I have ADHD. I've lived with ADHD my entire life. After I got diagnosed at the age of 10, my parents kind of didn't take it too seriously because I was struggling so much in so many ways in my life, and they just kind of assumed this is another one of those like dumb like fluff diagnoses that they're throwing at you. It's just another label they're sticking on you. You don't actually have ADHD, most likely. You're just being told that because your teachers can't figure out what's wrong with you. I was given a bottle of Ritalin, which I refused to take because I have some issues with taking medications. I don't like it. I'm contrarian like that. And so after the bottle of Ritalin disappeared into the back of the medicine cabinet and no improvements were seen or observed, my parents just kind of gave up on the idea and we never talked about it again. So I just assumed that was another one of those cases where, you know, you hear about how the drug companies are constantly pumping out Ritalin back in those days. It was like the 90s. It was the 90s. And so for a long time, I just believed that I was one of those kids that they were trying to get hooked on Ritalin because, you know, they needed to pump out more drugs and make more sales, right? And then I got to adulthood, and I mean, I struggled with a lot of different things for a lot of different reasons. And at some point, I saw a YouTube video, just a random YouTube video, where a woman was talking about her ADHD symptoms, and they were my symptoms. They were me. That was me. That was what I looked like. So then I started researching it because I love doing little deep dives into things every once in a while. And I have ADHD. That was not an incorrect diagnosis. I have been living with ADHD my whole life. There are some things that I royally suck at in life, and there are some things that I try not to do. I have organized my life, and I didn't really think about it. It's just one of those things, like, you want to be functional, so you organize your life around the ways in which you're not functional. So I could go through like a million examples of ways that I've done that, but basically the moment I realized it was ADHD, it was kind of like, okay, this is important, this is good, because now I can like go online and look up for ADHD coping skills versus normal person coping skills, which don't always work very well for me. Like, oh, just do X, Y, and Z, and I try it and it doesn't work, and I try it again and it doesn't work, and I feel like I'm banging my head against a brick wall. I go out and try like the ADHD way of fixing a problem, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, that actually is giving me a little bit of progress. I'm horribly disorganized. I've always been disorganized. I probably will always be disorganized. That's one of the ADHD things about me. There are a lot of them, but I figured I'd start going into ADHD versus autism versus just some random thoughts that I have on the issue, because it's interesting. I know ADHD so much better than I know autism. I know that ADHD is dopamine related. I believe that autism could very well be dopamine related too, but I don't know it as well. With ADHD, dopamine is it. Dopa and dopamine and all the dopaminergic kinds of chemicals inside your brain. That's where ADHD is. Constant craving of novelty, constant restlessness, physical restlessness that gets soothed with exercise, mental restlessness that I usually soothe with learning. I've got the YouTube channel. This keeps me busy. You'll notice that I don't have a real solid specialty on this YouTube channel. Like, I kind of talk about stripper things, but I kind of talk about transgender things, and I kind of talk about abortion things, and I kind of talk about general sex things, but I'm also talking about ADHD and autism in this video. I can't focus very well on any one thing. I get too restless. I need to move on to something new. Otherwise, I'm just bored, and then I don't make videos. Hyperfocus is the one thing that I do that sounds a lot more like autism than ADHD, I think. In my own very layperson opinion, I do hyperfocus, and I've hyperfocused since I was a small child. I either have hyperfocus or no focus on anything I'm doing, and I've seen a lot of people with autism look at that and say, well, autism, hyperfocus is very much an autistic thing. I had originally heard that ADHD can have certain autistic traits like hyperfocus. Like, you can have ADHD and have hyperfocus with ADHD. I don't know how accurate that is currently with the most up-to-date information that's out there, because for a long time people believed that you couldn't have ADHD and autism at the same time. Now they're kind of like, oh yeah, you can totally have both of them. They call it AuDHD, which I don't know how to pronounce, and so I just look at it and spell it. So I don't know how many people with ADHD, just ADHD, solely ADHD, have hyperfocus. I don't know. I don't know what the most recent information on that is, and that would be the major point at which it's like, okay, do you have ADHD or do you have AuDHD? I don't know. I did watch a bunch of videos on AuDHD just to kind of try and get a better understanding of it, and honestly, I can totally relate to the ADHD parts, but then they get into the autistic parts and they lose me. I'm like, I don't know what that's like. I cannot understand that experience. ADHD does have communication difficulties. That is part of it. With autism, a lot of the communication difficulties, I don't know, they're different. With ADHD, a lot of the communication difficulties are bouncy, jumpy, and energetic, and you interrupt people without realizing that you're interrupting them. With autism, it's a lot more understanding what people mean when they say it, because people have a lot of things that they say without saying, or say one thing but really mean another, or just flat out lie to you because it's conventional to do such, and that can be difficult to navigate. I think honestly it's difficult to navigate for anybody, but I don't think I've ever really had a problem with that. Because I remember being a kid and I remember people lying to my face and smiling at them while they smiled at me and knowing that they were lying to my face and getting really annoyed with it because why the hell can't people just say what they mean? Wouldn't communication be more effective that way? But people don't want to do that, which is a very autistic thing to say, but I understood at the time what they were doing and why they were acting the way they were. I hated it because they were treating me like shit, and I hated being treated like shit, but I understood why people acted the way they did. The things I didn't understand were usually linked to intrasexual competitive behaviors. I didn't understand that for a very long time. I had people constantly telling me I was ugly as a child, and then when I got older, it started to dawn on me. When I became a stripper, it started to dawn on me that all these people who had been putting me down, treating me bad, telling me I was ugly, they were jealous. Because in my hometown, very small town, very isolated town, this might not seem like much to you, especially if you spend a lot of time online and you see beautiful women all the time, but if you're in a really small, really rural, really isolated town before the internet got huge, this is about as pretty as you get. And so growing up, people treated me differently. And I didn't understand that until I got much older. They didn't treat me well. And that had there were a lot of factors at play there. Anyway, communication problems, yes, lots of communication problems. I don't think it was because I was bouncy and quick to interrupt people. If anything, I think it was something else that I'm not comfortable talking about. I'll get into that later in this video. I've got it in my notes. I'm definitely going to talk about it. Anyway, autism. Autistic traits that I don't have. Stimming. No. I've never done stimming. I do listen to the same song for hours and hours at a time. Habitually, I will pick out a song and I will listen to it for hours and hours and hours and hours. The reason I do that is it helps me to maintain focus because I have a really hard time maintaining focus. And listening to a song that has a specific mood will help me to kind of hold on to that mental state for as long as possible. And it prolongs mental states for me. So I will listen to certain songs, energetic songs if I'm trying to work out or do the dishes. I listen to music while I drive, which is very common in ADHD. And again, it makes me feel like I'm more focused on driving. Because if I'm not listening to music while driving, I feel, and I don't know how accurate this is because I've heard that it doesn't actually help you focus, but I feel like my mind is just kind of wandering, and I don't want to have my mind wandering while I drive, so I turn on music. But no, I don't do stimming. Organization. The thing with autism that always gets me is the fact that autistic minds are fundamentally organization driven. They need to have organization. If they expect something to happen on a scheduled time, it's supposed to happen on that time. If they want, if they're working on something, it has to be organized. It has to be just so. There's a right way to do things, and there's a sense of order to an autistic mind. This brain was made of chaos. I can't. I've never been able to ever. I'm extremely disorganized. Even in the things that I can hyper focus on, like novel writing. I hyper focus on novel writing. I use novel writing as a way to generate a state of hyperfocus just so that I can get the high that comes with hyperfocus because it feels good. I don't do drugs, but I do novels. I write for hours. And I mean, that sounds like a very ADHD thing. So I mean, that could be a thing because I'll work for 5 hours straight. I'll be like aching to go to the bathroom and I'll realize that I'm desperately thirsty and I'm desperately hungry, but I just couldn't stop until I got to a good stopping point and I had to get it down. Otherwise I was going to lose it. And I had it all in my head and I was holding on to it and it was all just angled the right way. So I had to get it there. Is that autism or is that just ADHD? And again, I had heard originally, and I'm sure that I could find a billion articles online that would say that because I don't know. It takes a while for the internet to update its information, so you'll find articles that use outdated information that will corroborate your ideas, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're up-to-date articles. So I've heard that you can have ADHD and hyperfocus. I've heard that. For me, yeah, totally can hyperfocus. But even when I'm hyperfocused, I'm still terribly disorganized. I have book notes in random files on my phone. I have book notes in random files on my computer. I have I have a huge mess. I also use music, again, to try and keep myself as focused as possible for as long as possible. So there are multiple hour-long spans of time that I've worked on novels where I've been listening to the same song on repeat. I always use headphones so that nobody else has to deal with my insanity. But other autistic traits, organization, no. Definitely not. Routine, no. No, there is no part of my life that's routine driven. I wish I could be a routine person because I know that they're more efficient, and I am not. The best example I can give is strip club. Strip club seems like, to me, if somebody was to boil down all the things that autistic people hate being exposed to and stick them all in one giant room, that would be a strip club. It's disorganized, it's chaotic, there are drunk people everywhere. You can't predict what a drunk person's going to do half the time. You never know what you're walking in on. You never know what you're getting yourself into. You never know who you're going to meet. There's no real schedule. The DJs are calling you up on stage at random intervals depending on how many girls are there and how many girls have sold private dances, and so they're not available to go on stage. So you never know when you're going to get pulled up on stage. You never know anything is going to happen until it's happening. And it's so completely chaotic, and it was my paradise because it was so engaging. Like, I never knew what was going to happen. Oh my God. It was so nice. It was noisy, it was loud, you're getting touched all the time by random people because people, like, they'll grab your shoulder, they'll try to grab your butt, so you kind of have to push them away. When you're on stage, you have to make sure they don't try to cop a feel on stage. People are crowded into small spaces, so you're bumping into people when you're walking around. I had one guy grab me and try to kiss me, and he broke my shoe because I was pushing away from him so hard while he was trying to kiss me that my shoe snapped because I was balancing and pushing. It sounds like an autistic person's deepest, darkest nightmare. Oh, and it's noisy. I mentioned it was noisy, right? It's really noisy. It's a lot of stimulation, and I would occasionally meet girls who would get hired at a strip club because they wanted to be a dancer and then quickly stop coming to work. They, like, just wash out of the job because it was so overstimulating. There's so many people, there's so much going on, there's things happening all around you. 360 degrees, you've got stuff going on, and it was perfect. It was perfect for me. It was a very happy kind of chaos for me, so I did great there. But it doesn't sound like a place that an autistic person would feel comfortable, and I always felt so peaceful in a strip club. The more chaotic, the better. So routine, no routine. Constant need for novelty in my case. Again, with the strip club, like, I was constantly trying to meet new people. I was constantly trying to do new things. I constantly needed novelty. So things like routine, predictability, organization, none of that going on in my head. Communication difficulties, we're going to talk about those later. Masking, yes, tons of masking. My whole life, masking. The question is, what am I masking? Am I masking ADHD? Am I masking autism? Am I masking a third thing that, again, I'm going to have to talk about later in this video because that's kind of a big issue and I don't feel comfortable talking about it. But if I'm going to be objective about this issue, I'm going to have to talk about it. Repetitive words or actions, echolalia, never really had that. Unless I'm missing something. And I mean, you guys would have noticed that in one of my videos. I do tend to revisit the same information in videos, but that's because I can't remember what I said from one minute to the next because I keep forgetting because I can't remember what I'm talking about half the time because I'm painfully distractible and it's really not fun. Sensory and overstimulation, yeah, never been a problem with that. The more sensory overload you can give me, the better, honestly. Just heap it on there, man. Give me all the sensory overload you can give me. I will take that shit. I will love it. Unaware of people's emotions. I struggle a lot with women. I struggle a lot with interacting with women. I struggle a lot with understanding women. I honestly think it is because I am desensitized to, I don't want to say trauma. It's such a cliched word. I don't want to say trauma. But honestly, desensitized to trauma. I've seen so much fucked up shit in my life, and I definitely prefer that term to trauma because trauma is so overused that it's lost a lot of its meaning. When you say fucked up shit, people understand. Fucked up shit means fucked up shit. I've seen so much fucked up shit in my life, and so when I'm talking with girls and I see them getting upset about things that are not particularly upsetting, honestly, I don't know a better way to say it. I just can't relate very well. And I've gotten better as I've gotten older. I've become more empathetic as I've gotten older. I've practiced empathy more as I've gotten older. I knew a girl who was afraid of butterflies because they were unpredictable and sometimes they would flutter near her face and she found it unnerving. And everybody's got a thing, you know? Everybody's got a thing, so okay, butterflies are your thing. I don't get it, but I don't have to get it to understand that butterflies are your thing. Cool, all right? No butterflies, it's the middle of winter. I think you're good. You know, stuff like that. I've struggled sometimes because women would get upset, particularly in strip clubs where women are really, really emotional. Like, women get super emotional in strip clubs and they get emotional about weird shit, and you're sitting there watching a girl like breaking down in tears and crying in this really dramatic fashion because she broke her watch. I saw a girl cry like just horribly because she'd broken her watch. And she comes into this was an actual thing that happened. She came into the manager's office and she's crying to the manager in a very unusual way. I would say almost a childlike attention-seeking kind of way about her broken watch and about how she's really upset about it. At that time, I was in the manager's office talking to the manager about how I hadn't come in when I had planned to come in because I had my baby, my pregnancy had been ectopic and I had needed emergency surgery to remove my very first baby. And so then I had not come into work for, a while because I needed to recover from abdominal surgery and my stomach was all scarred up. And she's crying about a watch and I'm just sitting there like, I struggle to understand. So with autism, I know that there's a struggle to understand other people's emotions. I have a struggle to understand other people's emotions. I tend to think that my struggle to understand other people's emotions is just the fact that I've seen too much. I understand what happens when things are actually bad, like really bad, and being upset about superficial shit confuses me because I struggle to relate. I struggle to empathize. So that's my thoughts on that. I don't think it's autism. It could be autism, but I think it's just a life experience kind of issue. Let's see what else we got. Okay, we're on to the part that I'm most interested in. Confusing factors. Cognitive overload versus disorganization. So the first thing that I've got written down here, the thing that made me really start looking into ADHD, I mean, there was that video I saw that was like, oh my God, that's me. But also just the fact that I have struggled a lot with organization. I have 5 children now. It is very difficult to keep a house clean. It is very difficult to keep on top of the laundry. It's very difficult to keep on top of the dishes. I struggle constantly with it. My husband is constantly picking up my slack. It annoys me because he's already got enough work on his plate. He doesn't need to be doing extra. But I just can't keep up. And I can't focus because I'm constantly distracted. It's like, oh crap, there's a diaper. Oh crap, I gotta give somebody a snack. Oh crap, I gotta do this. I'll start working on the dishes and then I'll do a bunch of things. And I've actually gotten a lot better at it. I've gotten to the point where I just tell the kids, look, I know you're dying of starvation over there, but you can wait 5 minutes for that snack. I need to finish these dishes first. And they're getting older, some of them, so they're starting to understand that a little bit better. But there was a while where I would start doing the dishes, get distracted doing like a blowout diaper or something, and I wouldn't come back to the dishes. I'd go start doing the laundry, and then the dishes wouldn't be done, and the laundry would end up getting not done, and it was this huge mess. There's a thing called cognitive overload. I definitely live with a lot of cognitive overload. So one of the things I failed to do when I originally filmed this video was get into what cognitive overload is, and I think that's kind of important. I see a lot of people these days self-diagnosing with ADHD, and I understand that getting a diagnosis is difficult. I didn't go back and update my diagnosis when I figured out that I had ADHD, and a lot of people have criticized me for that, like, oh, you self-diagnosed. It's like, well, technically I didn't self-diagnose because I was diagnosed when I was like 10. But I went back and started talking to a clinician at one point, and he was like, well, you outgrew it. I was like, you don't outgrow ADHD. It's kind of a permanent state in your brain. He was like, no, you probably outgrew it. People outgrow it all the time, and so you outgrew it. And all the issues that you're struggling with right now, it's just pregnancy brain. You have mommy brain. That's all. Fucking asshole. Anyway, that was a waste of my time. Therapy has mostly been a waste of my time every single time I've attempted it. But yeah, I see a lot of people, like I've talked to a lot of people who they watch enough TikTok and then they're like, oh yeah, I probably have ADHD, or yeah, I probably have autism. And it's like, or you could have a bunch of other things, and one of those other things is cognitive overload. You've got too many balls in the air and your brain is struggling to maintain an awareness of all those different things, so you start dropping balls. Cognitive overload can look like ADHD, because honestly, I think ADHD is just a permanent state of cognitive overload. You got so many things going on, and there's so many bright, shiny colors in the world, and you're so distracted, and it's like... but yeah, like, there's a lot of things that can look like ADHD, and I think one of the problems that I'm having, and one of the reasons that I kind of wanted to do this video, was the fact that I keep seeing people telling me that I have autism, because I think it's pretty obvious if you listen to enough of my videos that I'm a little bit neurodivergent, and I mean kind of a lot. And autism is kind of the sexy thing these days. There's a lot of people, oh, I have autism, autism this, autism that, and people will sometimes use words like neurodivergent and autism interchangeably, which autism is a form of neurodivergence. But I think a lot of people who aren't particularly familiar with it, they'll assume that autism is the only form of neurodivergence, and that's not true. One of the other forms of neurodivergence is ADHD. And so, there are some researchers who have suggested that ADHD is actually just a form of autism, but we haven't actually determined that yet. It's just been suggested. It's been an idea that's floated in the air until they come up with something a little more concrete, or come up with something a little bit more well-defined. I think it's safe to assume that ADHD and autism are separate things. Definitely there are tests to determine whether you have ADHD and tests to determine whether you have autism, and I can show up as ADHD on all the ADHD tests pretty darn easily, and I've never really shown up as autistic on any of the autism tests, even with my somewhat autistic traits, like social difficulties and awkwardness, or the fact that I can hyperfocus. In researching this video, I kind of realized that when a lot of people hear when I say I have ADHD, what they hear is I'm disorganized or distractible or kind of hyperactive. And what I'm really saying, and I never really realized this, but this is what I'm learning, I am neurodivergent, which doesn't mean I'm a special snowflake. It doesn't mean I need special treatment. It doesn't mean that I need special accommodations for my time blindness. I have an alarm clock on my phone just like everybody else. I'll be fine. What it does mean is that I do not think the way normal people think. And this can be a tremendous gift at times, and also kind of an annoyance at other times. I know I put a lot of emphasis on hyperfocus, but I'm very pleased with the way my brain works most of the time. I'm very happy with who I am. But I am also very much aware that I live in a world that was not designed for people like me. Here's the thing, like, people are always like, you want to be special, you want to be a special snowflake, you want to feel special about yourself. And it's like, I look at things like my unusual IQ test and the way that I experience life, the hyperfocus, the euphorias, some of the things that I've experienced in my life that I can't necessarily even communicate to other people, which I've struggled to communicate to other people through the years until I finally figured out, oh, this is just hyperfocus. This is a thing that happens to your brain, but not other people's brains for some crazy reason. I'm not trying to be special. I just kind of am special. And that's cool, you know. Everybody's a unique person, and, you know, I feel very blessed to be the way that I am. It's been good for me, you know, life's been good. But I'm not trying to be anything. In fact, I'm trying really hard to pretend that I'm normal. And I kind of suck at it, as you can probably tell from watching my videos and realizing that I'm a little bit different. Yeah, the poor social skills, a lot of that was intrasexual competition. And intrasexual competition is, by its very nature, designed to be confusing and deceptive and subtle, and if you've dealt with female intersexual competition, you realize that there's a lot of hidden aggression. There's a lot of smiles with daggers behind them. That is just the nature of female aggression. And so if you are the victim of female aggression, and if you live in a small town where other girls aren't as pretty as you, and then they get jealous because you're pretty and you look different than everybody else in the town because you're of a somewhat different ethnicity, you will understand that sometimes confusing, awkward, unpredictable social interactions that don't make any kind of sense, that's actually pretty normal. Like, you don't have to be autistic to have that. That's just girls. They can be like that. That's the reason I married a man. That's the reason I married a man. And I've got so many stories, because growing up, like, I had problems. I had the asthma issues, and so my teachers didn't acknowledge the fact that I was sick, and I was quite ill. And I had to just cope with that. And so I was constantly sick in class, trying to focus in class. Probably wasn't helped by the fact that I had ADHD, so focus was already a problem. But also the fact that my oxygen would get low and I just kind of zone out, and I'd space out and lose large parts of my day. Hyperfocus that I did when I was young was usually a way to distract myself from physical discomfort. I would drift into a fantasy world, and if the fantasy was strong enough, it would keep my mind away from the physical agony. Yeah, you get to a point where you try to get out of your body as much as possible, because your body is a very not pleasant place to be. And so I dissociated as much as possible when I was young, because it was a survival mechanism. Like, it was totally a survival technique. And now that I'm older, I use it because it gets me kind of high and it feels good. And that is one thing that I've got in my notes right here. The fact that I had a chronic illness when I was young, the fact that I was constantly struggling with being sick, the fact that my teachers didn't acknowledge that I was ill, you know, all of that really blurs everything. It muddies the waters. How much of it was autism, how much of it was ADHD, because I don't really think I have autism, but maybe, you know, if I did, how much of it was that, how much of it was ADHD, how much of it was intrasexual competition, how much of it was the fact that I was really sick, and because I was sick, I was zoned out all the time, and because I was zoned out all the time, I was a really weird kid, and people wanted to not be friends with the weird kid, or bullies would make fun of the weird kid. How much of me being weird as a kid was the fact that I was so sick it was hard to walk. I was so sick it was hard to stand up. I was so sick it was hard to move around. I was so sick that I was just kind of staring blankly at the wall most of the time. You know, how much of it was ADHD and zoning out, not paying attention, being disorganized? How much of it was, this is a really sick kid? I don't know. I mean, it's way too late to go back and look into that and find out objectively, like realistically, what was going on there, because I mean, hell, a lot of my teachers are probably quite old by now, if they haven't already died of old age, and also they weren't really in a position to give a damn about me anyway. So yeah, there's also PTSD. I'm not going to get too much into PTSD with this. I didn't think I like to pretend I don't have PTSD. With this surgery and some of the things that happened to me, of course, it was a surgery, so there was some medical stuff happening. And I mean, this last month has been interesting. I had month and a half. This last month and a half has been interesting. I had some things happen that were medical in nature that I don't know if normal people react the way I reacted to some of those things. Anyway, that's going to be another video. I'm going to make a video talking about the surgery because it's interesting and a lot of people end up needing the surgery, and so I wanted to tell my story of it. Just some of the things I learned and some of the experiences I have, and also it's an interesting story, so why not? I got some notes here about some things I'm not comfortable about, and this is the end of the video. This is the part that I'm honestly putting off. Bottom line, I have a lot of geniuses in my family. I have a lot of really brilliant people in my family, and I'm not comfortable talking about that aspect of things because it plays a role and I don't like to talk about it. There is no good way to talk about high intelligence. High intelligence is kind of damning, actually. Everybody wants it, everybody covets it, and if you have it and you speak openly about it, then you're being conceited and arrogant and narcissistic. So you can't talk about it, and if you have it, then you really can't talk about it. I will say, on the bright side of my family of geniuses, I'm probably one of the dumbest members of the family, so that's kind of cool. I'm a little bit of a black sheep. I didn't become a doctor like my dad or any of my uncles, and I didn't get a master's degree like my mother did. You know, whatever. I went off and became a stripper instead. And I mean, I write novels, so I've kind of restored myself to the family's good graces after I published that first novel. And I need to go publish more novels, but I have to finish them first. Editing is a bitch. But no, I mean, I at the end of the day, I come from a family of brilliant people. And there is a genetic factor in intelligence, and I know that I got hit with it too. My brain is very lopsided. My brain is not symmetrical, one might say. My intelligence is not symmetrical. My brain is probably about as symmetrical as anybody's. I had my IQ tested when I was, I think, in the 4th grade. And they tested it and they found that most of my IQ was average or below average. Mathematically, I'm below average in intelligence. In a lot of other areas, I'm average or below average, mostly. The one way in which I was not average or below average, it was really funny looking at the IQ score they had. My parents put it away in a file somewhere and then they lost it because they're very disorganized people themselves. And so I'm probably never ever going to see what that initial IQ test said, but I did see it at the time and I do remember it. And I remember that the numbers were low number, average number, low number, average number, low number, average number. And then there was one number that was just right up near the top of the chart. And that is linguistic intelligence. I ended up talking at some length about this, and then after I was done filming the video, I realized that it was something I needed to read up on, so I went and looked it up, and sure enough, what I have is called a Spiky profile, and it is actually quite common in individuals who are neurodivergent. And you might be thinking, aha, autism, but also ADHD. It's really common in ADHD because people with ADHD are neurodivergent. So yeah, this all tracks. So my family, of course, my dad is a genius and my mom is pretty smart cookie. I don't know if she was a genius or not. I think her IQ was, I think she was at 135. And I think 130 is the cutoff for genius, but it might be 140. So I don't know if she was a genius or just a hair below. My family was brilliant, and so I grew up with this really brilliant family, and so we grew up different, you know. The way we talked to each other, the language that my family used. My parents, of course, were both very highly educated people, and they were very proud of being highly educated people. So, of course, they talked like highly educated people. And Like, I've actually had people scold me in some of my videos telling me that I'm talking like I'm smart and I'm trying to convince people that I'm smart, and it's all fake because I'm a stripper, so I need to stop pretending to be smart. And dude, I would love that. I would love that. I would love to be able to hide some of the upbringing that I had. I won't say my intelligence. The way I grew up with really, really scholastic, intellectual people who were proud of their scholastic achievements. You grow up with people who just talk like they have big brains. And when you grow up with a mom and a dad who both talk like they have big brains, you end up being a kid who talks like they have a freaking big brain. And then all the other kids in your school treat you like that weird kid who talks funny, and you don't know how to stop doing that. You don't know how to tone it all down and talk normal. Could be autism. Could be autism. Could also be the fact my dad's a genius, my mom is either a genius or, you know, just a couple hairs below a genius, and the two of them talk like it all the damn time. So I grew up with like linguistic patterns being my language. The language that I grew up, my native tongue, was not the same. It was a slight dialectic difference between my family and then all the kids in my school and all the people around me. And so it was a slight cultural difference. Also, another cultural difference was just the emphasis my parents put on education. You know, every parent in my generation was telling their kids, go to college so you can get a good job, right? That was the whole mantra we were fed. It was full of bullshit. It was a complete lie, but that's what we were all told. My parents actually did go to college, and they thought it was the most wonderful thing on earth. And so they were like, oh, when you get to college, you're going to do this. When you get to college, you're going to do that. College is the most wonderful thing. Let me tell you about my experience in college. They treated it like Mecca. It was amazing. It was just this wonderful, great thing that was totally going to happen to me when I got older, and I was going to have such a great time there. There was always this expectation of scholastic achievement. There was always this expectation that that was the only road that was available. And then as I got older and I tried very hard to fit myself into this mold of going to college and being scholastic, and my God, having a desk job. How does anybody have a desk job? I have to get up and move. The life my parents wanted for me was not remotely the life that fit me. And so I ended up not living that life. But there was like this constant clash between my parents' culture of books, learning, scholastic achievement, you know, philosophy, enriching your mind, religious concepts, you know, things that are really, really deep. Let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's talk about how this works. My dad was so proud of me when I was like 3 years old. I was a little kid. I was sucking my thumb, and I pulled my thumb out of my mouth and said, Dad, how can there be one God if there's God the Father and Jesus and the Holy Spirit? And my dad was so proud of me because I was a 3-year-old and I was talking about this shit, and that's what my family talked about. So of course that's what I was talking about. That was what my family did. That was how my family was. That was normal for us. And then I go out into the world, and my parents hated sports because my dad had a lot of similar chronic illness issues to mine when he was young. So his experience of sports was kind of similar to my experience of sports. It was torture. It was like, this is the most painful, agonizing thing that you could do to me, and it's normal and it's expected. And so my dad wasn't a big fan of sports, and I ended up having enough really, really agonizing experiences playing like football or softball or dodgeball. Or I liked dodgeball too. I wish I had been healthier, because I think I would have had a lot of fun playing dodgeball, but I was always so sick by the time we started playing that I couldn't enjoy it, and that really sucked. Anyway, he wasn't a big fan of sports. I grew up with this expectation that sports was just really a waste of time and energy, because I didn't understand it, because my parents didn't understand it, so they didn't value it, so they didn't teach me the value of it. And so then I grew, I go into the local culture in my hometown, and everybody's all about sports, and when I'm not all about sports, I was weird. So it's another thing. It was this constant, my family's culture clashed horribly with the local culture, so it made me weird. And it was a bunch of stuff that I was raised to be and taught to be, and some things that I even had to unlearn as I got older. But that was what I was as a kid, because that was my familial culture versus local culture, which was vastly different. And there was totally a very crab in the bucket kind of mentality of the people in my hometown. Like, even when I tried to move out of my hometown, people tried to stop me. Like, a lot of people tried to stop me. Because it was a really small, really rural place, and there was definitely a very crabs in the bucket kind of, you can't achieve more than us sort of mentality. Like, if you do, that's bad. If you're smarter than us, that means you think you're better than us, and that makes you bad. If you don't want to drink excessively, well, this is where in this town we drink excessively, so you have to drink excessively, and if you don't, you're bad. Plus all the intersexual competition where I try to make friends with girls. Not all the girls. There were some other pretty girls in the town, but not a heckin' lot. Like, people would joke when they came into the town that, there was a beautiful woman behind every tree. There were no trees in my hometown. Like, it was just... There were a couple trees in my hometown. There were a couple pretty girls in my hometown. All of that plays a role. All of that plays a part in the social awkwardness. It plays a part in the quirkiness that develops when you're always weird and you always know it and you have to hide and you don't know what it is about yourself that's so wrong. Like, that's classic autism experience. There's something about me that's not right. People don't like it. I have to hide it. And so people start masking. With me, I think it was just that I was a smart person in a town full of really dumb people. Because I moved to my current home state, the place where I live now. I moved to the city because I wanted to be in a city, because I knew that a city would give me a lot of anonymity. It would help me mask a lot better. It would help me hide things a lot better. It would expose me to a lot more people. It would give me an opportunity to meet like-minded people, because I would meet so many people that by sheer volume alone, eventually I would find other people that I was compatible with for friendship. And then I met my husband, and now I'm married with 5 kids. So it worked. But I've noticed, like, I got a job at a Walmart, and I was working with a bunch of normal people, local people at the Walmart, and I was getting along great with them. Like, I got along great with those people. I loved those people. Like, I loved the team that I was working with on Walmart. Like, all of them were just awesome. Except for that one guy who tried to get me fired because I wouldn't sleep with him. He was kind of a jerk. But everybody else there, like, it was great. And I normaled very well. I did notice and I did observe, and this is something that happens to people with high IQs, everybody else was talking and operating kind of at this level, and I was kind of living at this level, and I knew I was different, and I knew that I kind of had to hide that a little bit. But, my husband is more intelligent than I am, by far. And I talked to him about, the social awkwardness that comes with intelligence, because I just assumed that was a given. And he was like, well, not necessarily. You just have to meet people on their own level. And so, like, I hung out with folks and I met them on their own level, and we had a great time, Like, yeah, I couldn't talk about my own interests with them, and I couldn't always say what was on my mind. Calm down, slow down. They're not going to be interested in that. So just let the conversation flow. Talking in group settings, I was nervous about that. And I think that was just because I never had good social experiences talking in group settings as a kid, which again, could be autism, but it could also be my family's social culture, which was very introverted and very... My family was just weird. My family was weird. I had a great time talking with people. I didn't find it draining or challenging to talk with people in a group setting. In fact, I was really craving it because I really wanted to be socializing with people. Being a stay-at-home mom can be very isolating, and so hanging out with a bunch of coworkers, just listening to them talk. Like, honestly, I love observing the flow of conversation among other people. I feel like a lot of other people are more socially gifted than I am, and they seem more relaxed in social settings than I do. And so it's really beautiful to me to watch other people talking. How much of this is autism? I don't think it's autism. I think it can be explained so much more, easily with other things. There's the Occam's razor argument. I think it's just easier to explain a lot of these issues that I've had as either ADHD or you know, my family's culture of intellectualism. Let's just say that. Because I don't know how much of this was my own intelligence and how much of it was the fact that I had geniuses for parents who didn't know how to normal very well. And so I grew up with this bizarre cultural difference that I then had to navigate. And I mean, you guys have heard me talking on this video. I'm half there and I'm half not. I can kind of normal. I can kind of do the lingo a little bit, but then every once in a while, if I relax too much, I revert to, you know, big words. And that's my native language. Anyway, I think that's everything in my notes because I'm sitting here. I wrote all this down because I knew I would get distracted halfway through, which is kind of an ADHD thing. Like, not to be all cliche about it, not to be all stereotypical about it, but it's kind of an ADHD thing when you can't remember what you're going to talk about, so you have to write it down because you're too damn distractible and you're going to go off on a tangent. I think that's everything. Yeah, like PTSD could be playing a role. You know, there's just so many other things, and I don't think autism is it. I could be wrong. And I mean, it's something that I'm perfectly willing to revisit, you know, a couple years down the road from now. For all I know, even though, like, I've taken all the self-tests. ADHD, yes. Autism, no. I've taken the test the little self-tests that they have online that are like, you know, this is the one that catches autism that, you know, might slip through on other tests. Still, it's not there. I'm not there. I have, you know, I have ADHD. And so any part of me that, I'm not neurotypical. Any part of me where there's an overlap between ADHD and autism, like I totally have those ADHD symptoms that will kind of look like autism, but I don't seem to have any autism in and of itself. But at some point they might lump those two together and say, no, they're actually the same thing. We just found that out. And it's like, okay, well, in that case I have whatever I have. Not neurotypical, not normal, but, you know, what does that even mean? I have asked myself several times while studying this, especially when looking at, you know, just the quirkiness of autism. How do we know that we're not just pathologizing high intelligence? Like, how many of these people, is it unreasonable to ask if maybe a lot of these people who are saying that they're autistic and they're not neurotypical and all this stuff, or even ADHD, they might just have above average intelligence that we are pathologizing. Ah, okay, cool. I need to wrap this up. There is a poopy diaper and it is calling my name. I hope you guys are all in good health, and hopefully this was interesting, and I'll talk to you guys later.